Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Women of Willis Tower Talk program today. Women of Willis is a network supporting women in Willis Tower, and Tower Talks is our speaker program that features talks that help cultivate and foster collaboration and community within our neighborhood. And we're pleased to bring both of these programs together today for a very special panel highlighting something that many of us have in common, our place of work or our admiration for Willis Tower. We're just a day after International Women's Day, and there's a lot to celebrate. These are historic times. We have our first female vice president, record number of women represented in Congress, not to mention leadership positions all over the world. And despite the uncertainty with the pandemic and all the crazy things happening in the world today, there's a resiliency that we are all a part of, and progress is not slowing down. If anything, we need not look further than our place of work and the transformation that's been taking place to see these historic times play out right before our eyes. So today, we are going to hear from a few of those talented women at the core of this project and learn a little bit more about their stories and their individual contributions and see some of the progress that's taken place at the Tower. Before we meet our panelists, I would like to call out that through EQ Office's new ESG effort, EQ Impact, our purpose is to build economic health in communities by regenerating urban spaces, preserving local culture, and driving humanity into our workplaces. And part of how we live this purpose is through community partnerships. Willis Tower is proud to partner with two amazing programs, INOMA, the Illinois chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects, and Youth Build USA, an organization that partners with Opportunity Youth to build the skill sets and mindsets that lead to lifelong learning, livelihood, and leadership. Today, we welcome some of the students from these programs on our call. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so happy to have you. A few housekeeping items. Today's call is a Zoom webinar. Camera and audio commands have been disabled. But as the program progresses, we invite you to use your Q&A and chat function to send notes to the panelists and questions. We have a few discussion points to kick us off, but we'll do our best to answer all questions by the end of the presentation. So, without further ado, I am so excited to introduce you all to our panelists. We have Leanne Foley with EQ Office, Director of Construction, Rachel McGuire, EQ Office, Senior Director of Portfolio Management, Maggie McNamara, Senior Mechanical Engineer at ESD, and Janelle Moody, Senior Project Manager at RLE. Welcome all. Thank you all so much for joining us. So I'd actually like to kick things off to learn a little bit more about each of your backgrounds and how you got into this field of work and came to work at Willis Tower. And I'm going to kick it off to Maggie first.
Hi everyone. So I have been around buildings and construction basically my whole life. My mom owns and operates a hardware store. My dad's a contractor, so it's kind of ingrained in me. I went to school for architectural engineering. I'd always have an appreciation for architecture, but with an engineering mind. And so I found this major that was really building focused engineering. And so I moved to Chicago and started working at ESD and really started to focus in repositioning and large scale adaptive reuse, and started working on Willis Tower about 5 years ago and haven't looked back since.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, Maggie. I'll kick it off to Janelle next.
Thanks, Lydia. So I come from the design side, so that has not been my role on this project. I had been a practicing architect here in Chicago for about 10 years. And while I enjoyed that very much, I always kind of leaned toward more the construction side of a project than the conceptual design side of a project. And so on my projects, I would see project management firms such as RLE you know, really playing a pretty key part in the success or not of a project. And so I was looking for new challenges kind of outside of typical architecture, and joined RLE in 2017 on the project management side when we were starting working with EQ on the tower repositioning.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Janelle. Leanne, let's have you go next.
Thank you, Lydia. My path here was not as conventional as what you just heard. I went to school for pre-veterinary medicine. I absolutely, since the age of 3, thought I was going to be a vet. And it wasn't until I went through my schooling that I realized how heartbreaking it was for me, and found a path that I thought was just going to deter me slightly for a short period of time. And that was 20 plus years ago. So, and I haven't looked back. I think one of the things about this industry is every day we wake up and there is a puzzle put in front of us that we get to take apart and find a way to put back together. And it's a learning experience every day. So a path that I continued on. Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Leanne. I always enjoy hearing those unconventional stories and paths where people are doing things they never thought they would find themselves doing. So thank you so much for sharing that. Rachel, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so I have been at EQ for almost 12 years now, and my path wasn't straight into development. I'm actually consider myself quite the finance nerd, and started in FP&A, then to corporate finance, then national asset management. And back when Blackstone had bought Willis Tower in 2015, I thought it might be nice to, you know, try my hand at something else. And absolutely fell in love with development. It was nice to get out of spreadsheets and hands-on and see the changes that you make every day and how that impacts everyone around you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rachel. That's great. And Rachel, I'm going to keep the ball in your court here. For those who may not have been to the tower in quite some time, or just aren't fully familiar with the redevelopment project, Rachel, can you talk us through some of the milestones of the project?
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. And super excited to share with you guys. If you haven't been to the tower in a while, which I know a lot of us haven't been, there's been some great changes going on. Starting with our amenities floor spaces on 33, 34, 66, 67. These were some of the spaces that you guys have probably already seen that were one of the first items that were completed once we purchased this asset. We really took a step back and we thought, you know, what's really going to attract the Class A tenants in this market? And with that, we thought having amenity space where tenants could gather, tenants can take a minute to pause, tenants can work out, would have some really great, you know, some really great stickiness with the tenants. So as you know, we have Tower House on 33, 34, we have Tone on 33, and we have Altitude on 66 and 67. If you want to go to the next slide. So you may not recognize this anymore, but this is what Willis Tower used to look like from an aerial shot. We had pink granite on all sides of the building, more than I think anyone cares to ever see again. And it was closed off almost as a fortress. And one of the things that we really wanted to do when we came to this building was open it up to the community. Willis Tower no longer needed to be this huge monolithic building that nobody could get inside or get outside. What we wanted to do was to create space, create a destination, and almost a neighborhood within the CBD in the Loop. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is what it looks like today. Hard to imagine, just 5 years ago, we started this project, and at the end of it, this is what we're working with. You can see that there's no longer pink granite anywhere. We've opened it up so there's transparency through the space. You can really look inside, see the vibrancy, it draws you inside. And on top of it, you can see our 30,000 square foot sun deck that's open to the public as well as tenants. We're going to be launching that opening later this year, but you can see it's space to hang out, grab your lunch, meet some friends up here. Just something that's very unexpected while you're in the Loop. Can I go to the next one? Here's some after pictures. As I mentioned, you can see inside the space, we have these huge welcoming entrances. And as you walk around the building, it just feels like somewhere you want to be, somewhere your tenants want to be, and no longer feels closed off. And the next one. Also very important to us during this redevelopment was public art. When we acquired the building, there was a Calder that sat at the entrance on Wacker, and it was very important to us to be able to give some public art back to the community. The piece that you're looking at right now is by Olafur Eliasson. This was a piece many years in the making that he designed specifically for Chicago, for Willis Tower. This actually went up at the end of the year, so a lot of you may not have been able to see this in person yet, but definitely something to check out on your way back to the office or as you're walking by. Different times of the day, it kind of gives a different glow. Just a really cool piece that's been added. All right, the next one. You guys might remember this. This is what the lobby used to look like when you'd come in off Wacker. You had the stainless steel. You went down to where the security desk greeted you. If you want to go to the next one. And now you have our two new lobbies. On the left, you have the Franklin entrance. On the right, you have the Wacker entrance. On the right, we changed Wacker so that you now go up instead of down when you enter. The security desk is to the right, and you see that there's a lot more softer finishes. We want you to have those moments when you come in where you don't feel rushed. If you don't need to be, you can stop and take a minute. You have a place to check your phone, grab your badge, drink your coffee. Want to go to the next one? And then there's Catalog. Catalog is our 300,000 square feet that we've added on the Jackson side. This will be where all our food and beverage tenants are. You know, we have right now, because of COVID, there's limited openings right now, but you can still grab your Sweet Green, you can grab your Do Right Donuts or Tortazo. There's Shake Shack, there's a lot of great options in there. In the future, we have tenants like Urban Space coming. Market Creations is on the second floor right now. Just very open, airy space. We designed this to feel like you're in the streets of Chicago, however authentic to the tower. And then just one more shot of the roof deck. I know me personally, I'm very excited to be having my lunch out here when we get back to the office.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for walking us through that. I've been with Willis Tower for about 2 years now in the marketing department, and it's amazing to me. I remember that old lobby coming to the tower years ago, and it's like you're in a completely new space. It's gorgeous. There's warmth there. It feels definitely very different, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous space. Thank you again, Rachel, for walking us through that. And speaking of walking us through these milestones and these new spaces, I often like to stop and think, you know, when a redevelopment project happens like this, there are people behind every design decision, every place, table and chair, the little details that we might not consider daily as we walk through these spaces. So I'd like to ask each of the panelists to tell me one specific part in this renovation process that you played a role in that we might walk by every day. And I am going to start off with, Janelle.
Thanks, Lydia. And Rachel, thanks for that walkthrough. It's been a long time since I've seen those old photos and remember it that way. All that chrome. So the part I'm proudest of working on, and I touched a lot of parts of this, is the facade. And so this is a beautiful shot of the new facade, and just hats off to the design team who really successfully, you know, like Rachel said, sort of built this sense of neighborhood at the street level with still maintaining the glass and steel of the iconic tower, but also putting warmer materials at the building entrances, like the terracotta and other things. So hats off to the design team who worked through all of that with EQ Office. And my role was not in the design, but really managing the workflow to keep the project moving. And I have to admit, there was a little bit of ongoing design during construction. And so that meant that we were always looking for creative ways to keep the project on schedule and drive design decisions while also, you know, keeping the project moving, because we didn't have the luxury of having every piece and part designed when construction started. So I'm really proud that this all came together. I think it's just fantastic looking, and it's a great experience in this little corner of the loop that, you know, frankly, I never enjoyed going to until now. So it's fantastic. That's my part.
Thank you for your contributions. Janelle, the facade is indeed beautiful, and we certainly appreciate walking by that gorgeous view every day. Next, I'm going to kick it over to Maggie.
So we were ESD is the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design engineer for the project. So, you know, what we touch is a little bit different than, you know, the beautiful architecture that you see as you walk in and that you probably notice. But basically, you know, my corny portion is that we touch the air you breathe as you walk into Catalog or any of the spaces is really, we had a hand in that, and I had a hand in that personally. And it's exciting, you know, you walk in on a freezing Chicago day and that heat hits you, like, just think of me next time. But, you know, we've really touched everything. I mean, even in this photo, you know, the lights that are there, you see the conduit running. I know a lot of people don't necessarily look up into the ceilings, but it's all I notice in most spaces. And so that's really exciting. Anytime walking through the lobbies, I'm always looking up in ceilings and, you know, seeing how we've contributed. So it's been really exciting.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing that. Next, let's toss it over to Leanne.
Thank you, Lydia. For me, I think working with the tenants has been a huge aspect of what I am most proud of. As the team on this call right here has done a tremendous effort with a major redevelopment, I'm stepping in behind the scenes and coordinating efforts with tenants, base building, and multiple general contractors to bring a raw shell condition to life. And so as you can see on the screen, I think this is a perfect example of a coordinated project between base building, myself, a tenant that we were welcoming into the building, and just seeing this space complete, finished, the vibrancy of it, and making sure that the tenant is happy at the end of the day is a huge success for me.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Leanne, and the work that you do to help our tenant spaces come to life. And Rachel, you're up.
Yes, so mine is, you know, after you walk through that beautiful facade that Janelle mentioned and you come up the stairs in Wacker, you're greeted by this wonderful artwork by Jacob Hashimoto. And this one just blows me away every time I'm in there. And this picture is beautiful, but it doesn't do it justice until you're down there and just feel the massiveness of this piece and how light and airy it feels, yet so big. The title of this piece is In the Heart of the Infinite Particle of Galactic Dust. And yes, I had to read that because I have a hard time memorizing it. Jacob Hashimoto is a local artist. He went to the Institute, the Art Institute of Chicago, School of the Art Institute of Chicago. He now lives in New York, but he had great pride in coming back and putting this piece in his hometown in one of the most iconic buildings in the world. And I also think this piece reminds me of the great collaboration that was amongst the teams for this. So I can say that everyone on this panel helped with this. Maggie, she was tasked with making sure these didn't blow around. You know, there's a lot of heating and air conditioning that needs to go in the space and the lighting for it. And it had to be just perfect so that these wouldn't tangle every time someone opened the door. And Janelle was right-hand man on this one. She was there day in and day out, making sure that everything was coordinated as it went in. And even Leanne and I were on the phone on weekends trying to figure out, you know, what do we do for floor protection so we don't destroy these beautiful floors as they bring in the lifts. So it's just a great reminder of just the collaboration on this team as well.
I love that. Thank you so much, Rachel. And I love hearing the story of collaboration that takes place in this redevelopment project and all that goes into it. And I know that you all kind of in your own way described the pride that you felt working on these touch points that we pass by every day. But I'd like to also ask you all what's one significant way you feel you've contributed to this huge project. Leanne, do you want to start us off?
Sure thing. I think ultimately, kind of combining efforts when you are supporting a team that's undergoing such a major project of this nature, and you're pulling in, working very closely with the retail tenants, and you are taking a lot of time to coordinate this vision that is being brought to the building as the overall redevelopment process is undergoing. And you're taking a brand that the tenant is trying to bring to the building and blend them together so that they marry, that they are seamless. I think that is a big effort, and happy to speak more to it, but I think mostly it's combining the design and the vision that the team is trying to roll out in a brand that a new tenant is proud to bring to the building and how they marry together.
I love that, watching that vision come to life. Janelle, what's one significant way you feel you've contributed to the project?
You know, I think mine is very similar to Leanne's, in that by building relationships to allow the support of the project, because oftentimes, like and Leanne also said, you know, each day like is coming to work and there's a new puzzle to solve. Well, that definitely is the case. And I think the contribution is getting to know all of the team members, from, you know, the operations and maintenance staff, security, the property management team, the development team, the architects, engineers, contractors and vendors, so that when a puzzle, when you're faced with the challenges of that puzzle, you're bringing the right people to the table, so that the solution incorporates the needs of all of the team members. There's a lot of stakeholders in a large project like this, and so I think the contribution is knowing who to talk to and who to bring in to resolve each day's puzzle.
Thank you for sharing that, Janelle. Maggie, how about you?
For me, it was really taking, so nobody ever wants to see MEP. It's the, you know, the black sheep of design. But really what I think what I contributed is that I took both Gensler's design and EQ's, you know, design and tried to fit the MEP to, you know, accommodate that design and creatively come up with ways to constantly drive the client's desire for this amazing project, but like really trying to understand what the client wants, and then, you know, converting that and, you know, using my team and conveying that message to the team and really driving that message. And so I think we've successfully done that, you know, over the course of the project, and it still is, you know, how we're trying to you know, do work even, you know, in other locations in the building. It's really about keeping the client in mind and, you know, tailoring our design to fit the client needs.
Thank you, Maggie. A big project to think about the client's needs and the scope and the scale of the project. Really definitely helps me see Janelle's and Leanne's answers come to life, that puzzle, that vision, making it all work together. Thank you for those thoughts. And Rachel, how about you? What's one significant way you feel you've contributed to the project?
So this isn't going to sound very original, but I think it's driving the vision forward. You know, there are a lot of players, as Janelle mentioned, and, you know, one of the jobs as ownership is making sure that we don't get bogged down on the details that don't matter. So it's, you know, making sure everything comes together and driving it forward rather than getting sidetracked and getting frustrated, rather grabbing what the problem is, having the right people in place for the solution and keeping it moving. You know, we have people that we report to as well, so we need to make sure that we're keeping everyone informed as this project moved forward.
Thank you, Rachel. I think about your role and Janelle's role as well, project management and as ownership, kind of working through some of the inevitable challenges that come with a project of this scale. So Janelle, I'm going to kick it back to you. And then Rachel, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. What's one of the largest challenges of this project that you faced?
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and say certainly the biggest challenge is keeping a job like this, again, like on time and on budget. And that has so much nuance to it that probably I don't need to get into that level of detail with this group. I think though, for me right now, the biggest challenge is frankly the fact that the construction started in 2017. And it ended just recently. And so the design team had all been working on the project for years, even before construction started. So here we are collaborating on this major endeavor, and the project ended during the pandemic. And so, you know, we kind of lost that opportunity for closure as a team. So I really look forward to having this challenge get behind us so that we can enjoy the company of the greater team on this project, because, you know, there's tens, if not hundreds of people that I would love to have had a moment to share in the completion of this with, because it was really so much hard work and so much time and effort that to me is a big challenge that we never got that. And so I look forward to that this year, I hope.
Janelle, I definitely feel you on that one. And moving to the biggest challenge that I see, it's along the same lines as Janelle with budget, but a little different perspective on it, is managing the budget and deciding, you know, where do you spend those big dollars? There's so many decisions that need to be made on, you know, where money should go. And it's a balancing act to maintain the vision and not go over budget, to really find those moments that are at the human scale that will really be impactful moments, and drive forward on those while pulling back in other areas. And as a developer, you want everything to be perfect and everything to be the best of what it can be, but sometimes that's just not reality.
Hear you guys loud and clear on that, for sure. And to pivot, Leanne and Maggie, I'd love for you guys to share a little bit about your favorite part of this redevelopment project. Maggie, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I have a lot of favorite parts. I could be get like real nerdy and get into some of the, you know, real specifics, but I think what we were able to do is reuse a lot of the existing infrastructure. Over time, buildings have gotten actually more efficient, so we were able to reuse and not disrupt, you know, large sections of the building. We cut a pressure break in the middle of the building, which won't mean anything to a lot of people, but it's massive. The same equipment is in Kingdom Tower, which is going to be the tallest building in the world. Like, there's just large scale MEP that went into this building. We put in the largest kitchen exhaust heat recovery system in the United States, which is, you know, one, energy savings, and, you know, we got to work with a client that like saw that vision as something that needed to be done to accomplish their goal. So we were able to do that here. And then my other favorite thing is just the relationships that have been built on this project with the women on this panel. Like, I have a friendship with every single one of them, plus more. You know, you become very close knit. You're working together every day. If you don't like the people you work with, it's going to be, you know, make those challenges even more challenging. So that's like one of my favorite things about this is like years to come. You know, we're all relatively young. We have a long career ahead of us, I hope. And so, you know, I hope to work together with every single person. So it's been amazing. You know, we're going to miss it when it's gone, even though we may, you know, be challenged every day while we're on it.
I think I could piggyback off of both what Maggie and Janelle just said. I think from Maggie's perspective and the point she just hit home on, one of the things that I really took back from this project is that there was a true team that had to bring success. Each one of us played a different role, a unique role, and every project that I've ever worked on from a construction standpoint has its own unique characteristics. Being able to watch this team roll out a project of this magnitude and then be part of a contribution it's just beyond what my expectations were when I came to work here at Willis. And, getting to work with them, to Maggie's point, it was the first time I actually ever really got excited about asking questions about the MEP systems. So learning on a daily basis about things that I never thought I would have to ask questions about. And to Janelle's point, I know that she hasn't had the opportunity to completely celebrate or whatever, but from someone outside of bringing all of the major components to life, just watching the team, their level of appreciation with each other for the achievement that's been accomplished has been pretty cool to watch.
I love that sentiment. And I know this is only kind of a small part, but I think every time somebody walks through the tower, gets to their space, kind of takes that exhale and is just in the zone doing work, embracing that space to do the great work that they're doing, there is an appreciation for the space that they're in. And I'd like to think that every moment that we have that, we are celebrating you all and your accomplishments. And as this project is coming to a close, I would personally just like to thank each of you and those not on this call, men, women, and the like, who have played a role in this redevelopment project. Willis Tower is such a special place. It's iconic to Chicago, but at the end of the day, there are thousands of people who call this their workplace, and this new environment, this neighborhood that we've created, this warmth, really does set the stage and is a setting for so many great projects across so many different industries. So very appreciative for you all sharing your thoughts today. We would like to, at this time, opening it up to the audience. So feel free to hop into the Q&A feature. We do have a couple of questions that have come through. So maybe Leanne and Janelle, or anybody, I can open it up free for all if you guys have thoughts. What is a lesson or skill that you have learned during this development process that you'll take with you forward in your career?
Janelle, you want to go, or do you want me to?
You can take this one. I'll follow you.
I think ultimately we can all probably align ourselves with the fact that working in a building such as Willis Tower on such an iconic build is something that we will never forget. Projects like this don't come along on a daily basis. So I think just the appreciation of being a part of the transformation of a building of this magnitude was pretty significant. And I think we can probably all agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things that I learned here also was, I guess, to seek out expertise, think creatively when seeking out expertise, because there were some things encountered that, were unique. I'm thinking of, a corroded pipe, something that you would think, we all know how to deal with, but in the condition it was in Willis Tower, draining down a pipe that runs 100 stories is a big endeavor. So what I learned on this project is there are experts out there, seek them out, talk to your contacts, and share your contacts with others. because there were so many problems that I would not have been able to get through if folks hadn't shared their contact with me. And I'm making a more concerted effort with my colleagues to be talking about projects, sharing information so that we can all work together, you know, whether or not we're on the same project. I think that's a skill I've really learned here at Willis.
I love that. Yeah, and in the same vein of learning, we got another question that came through that Maggie had mentioned, that the members of this panel have become close during the project, and asks, what is one thing each panelist has learned from each other? I'll open this up free for all if anybody wants to dive in.
I can jump in here. One thing I'm gonna do is put Janelle on the spot as being the most organized person in this world. The way that she can take charge of a meeting and get everything on the agenda done and wrapped up and get through things to the point succinctly has just been amazing to watch. And I know when I have to run meetings in that fashion, I've definitely modeled it after what she does.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'm just going to give a shout out on this one to Maggie McNamara, because I rarely work with MEP engineers who can also translate the highly technical issues to, I'm going to say, you know, my level, right? Which is like just enough technical in order to help me understand why the issue is important and how to move it forward. But Maggie is exemplary in that regard. And so I really see it when I'm working on projects without her. So I think that's been fantastic. Thank you.
No problem. Anytime. You know, one thing that I think, you know, I'm going to shout out Leanne is that not working with her just on the podium, but other projects throughout the towers, just being able to communicate with contractors and how to drive issues and still be polite and nice to people, because I think in the construction industry, there's times where people get really combative, and I think Leanne does a fantastic job of just navigating those really difficult situations and not get heated, and just you know, keep your cool and kind of diffuse the situation, which I think is a very valuable skill and is overlooked a lot, like those soft skills. And so I think Leanne has done an amazing job, and I've like tried to carry that out, you know, in my career as well.
Thank you, Maggie. She also sees the backside of things too. So I think ultimately we have said it, the level of collaboration and learning from one another has been insurmountable for all of us. We have all grown during the course of this project, and there's a lot that we will continue to take away. And I think Maggie hit it earlier by saying that she does hope that she has the continued opportunity to work with us moving forward. I am fortunate that Rachel and I are with the same organization, so I do get the opportunity to ultimately collaborate with her on a daily basis. But having Maggie and Janelle as part of our team, they feel as if they are part of EQ, and it's been wonderful having them to partner with.
Thank you all for sharing that. I love that collaboration, that positivity, and that learning from one another. You all are on this team that's moved the redevelopment forward, but your roles are so unique in kind of your focus areas. So that is always wonderful to hear. And you know, there's something else that we all have in common on this project. Not only have you guys pushed forward building out these spaces, but you all work in the tower as well. So kind of through the eyes of a tenant of the space, what are kind of some of your favorite things that you enjoy about working at Willis Tower? Anyone can jump in. Don't be shy.
I have enjoyed, you know, having different options from a food standpoint. You know, having all those different tenants, knowing what went into building out those tenants, I think has given me more of appreciation. And I also love to be surrounded by the, you know, just the iconic architecture in the building. I think sometimes I feel like I take it for granted that like, oh, I'm just at Willis Tower again. But like for a lot of people, that's like an amazing, like people come from all over the world to come, you know, go up to the 103rd floor. And I sometimes need to take a step back and be like, this is amazing that we're working here. And so I've been trying to do that more lately to appreciate that like we're working at Willis Tower, this amazing icon. And so just taking all of that, taking advantage of all of that.
Oh, Janelle, I think we lost your audio.
Oh, double muted, sorry. Okay, so I would say, you know, Catalog's pretty great. That's the open space inside off of Jackson. What's been great is that is a meeting place, like for friends who live in the neighborhood, they want to come to meet me for lunch at Willis Tower. And, you know, it is kind of like a destination. It's new, it's got like great food and beverage, and I love the space. So I encourage everyone to stop over there during the workday when you're back downtown.
I love that. Any other thoughts? I do have another question here, but if anyone else wanted to chime in, Rachel?
And one thing I love is the tenant amenity space on 33. I've just noticed, I mean, it gets used all of the time. I use it all the time on there, whether it's meeting with different colleagues, if it's, you know, bringing people in who aren't necessarily tenants in the building. And quite frankly, having a place to grab a drink with coworkers without actually having to leave the building is nice. So it's just all in all, great space.
I would agree with what Rachel just said, having that, using that 33rd floor as the catalyst that really started maybe some of the whole redevelopment process. I think it changed the entire community of the building itself, and it gave us all the opportunity to start to really get to know our tenants, and the entire building became more of a true neighborhood than just a place that you have to go to work every day.
Love that, love that. I know that we had talked about some of the challenges that a couple of you had faced on this project, and to kind of look into that further, is there any advice that you would give for, let's just say, kind of overcoming just work challenges in general, just kind of applicable to all of us who aren't building iconic buildings? What advice would you give for just tackling a project? That's a free-for-all, so feel free to dive in.
From my perspective, I think Janelle really nailed it earlier in conversation when she talked about learning how to build your bank of resources. I can say that when I say that I had an unconventional way of entering into the industry, that is exactly what I did. Every single nuance from, you know, how does drywall go up? Like something as little as that, just knowing that no question is too small to ask, and it's going to ultimately lead to success by asking for support and gaining trust in the people that you're working with.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, my piece of advice is pick up the phone and talk to people. On these projects, there's every time I, instead of sending an email and calling someone to talk through the issues, I get so much further. So it's a funny little piece of advice, but I think that would make projects and people be more successful in general. I pick up the phone.
I think what I learned is really just to embrace the unknown. Like, we're always going to discover something. There's always going to be something that happens that's never happened before, especially at Willis Tower. And really just trying to embrace that and like prepare yourself. Like you're never going to be able to address everything. Projects, there's always going to be something that comes up that you didn't think about on everything. Much harder on a adaptive reuse and repositioning project like Willis Tower, but it happens with new buildings too. And there's always unknowns. And so just learning to embrace that.
I think furthering what Janelle said with communication, you're working with so many different people that sometimes your communication style needs to be tailored to different people that you're working with. And it's not just a blanket approach of this works with one person, it's going to work for everyone. So I think that's one thing I took away from this project with working with so many different people is you figure out what works and you roll with it, and it's not always the same.
Awesome. All very, very great advice. I'm hearing communication is key. Certainly must be crucial in such a large scale project. And kind of speaking on kind of just a step further into the advice, especially thinking about students who might be on the call. How, and maybe Janelle, you want to kick us off since you are our master of organization. What's your strategy kind of for approaching new projects, and how do you kind of organize and plan out? Like, what's the first thing you do kind of stepping into something new?
Yeah, so maybe I'll take it more from the organization approach, because the setup of a project is going to be different depending on what you're doing. I think, you know, probably people in the panel have gotten calls from me saying, how are you keeping this organized? Because it's a constant effort, right? And so I think using all of the tools we have and finding something that works for you, and then diligently keeping yourself on top of it. Because I know for myself, so many times I found the latest and greatest project management organizational thing, and, you know, 2 weeks in, I'm just using my pad of paper again. So, because I don't keep it updated. So I think it's really, there's not one size fits all. It's find what works for you, and then just know that you're going to need to maintain whatever tool that works for you. That would be my thought.
If anyone else has a thought, we do have another question that just came through. Since all of you are in this world of architecture and design and engineering and construction, we got a question asking if there are any other buildings or places in the city that are a favorite place to enjoy great conversation and enjoy the architectural background. You know, Willis is the best, but are there any other places that you just find architecturally gorgeous here in our great city of Chicago?
And I think one amazing, it's not necessarily a large tower, but the Riverwalk, I think, is a place where you can go to, you know, have that nature feel, as well as look at some of the most beautiful buildings that are in the city.
Yeah, I was going to say an outdoor space. The South Garden at the Art Institute is always a really nice place. It's also, you know, a place that's close to where we work, but you're kind of on the other side of Michigan Avenue, and you're feeling like you're in a different world over there. So I love that outdoor space.
I'm going to answer this question too. I don't know if I'm allowed, but before I was working with Willis Tower, I was over at Navy Pier, and they recently had a huge redevelopment project in commemoration of their centennial celebration, and it's gorgeous. And the pier has always felt kind of otherworldly to me too, like you stepped outside of the city into this different space. And the water, I always thought that that's just a really gorgeous place to hang out.
I always enjoy just enjoying the skyline. So like being on a boat and looking both, you know, I've always done the architectural river tours and the out into the lake, and take like everyone that comes to visit me to do those. Because I think one, you learn so much about the architecture and then the history of Chicago. And I think having the water so close to, you know, all of our buildings, you see the new buildings going up, you see buildings that have been there for, you know, 50, 60, 70 years. And so you get that full appreciation just both on the lake and on the river.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I I know we're kind of coming up on close shortly here. Aside from redevelopment and construction of Willis Tower, we are still in these unprecedented times of the pandemic. How are you guys doing? What are some ways that you guys have been staying engaged with friends and coworkers?
From my perspective, it's obviously been a very long year. I feel that this group on the phone here on this chat has been very fortunate in that we have not deviated from, let's say, our day-to-day. We're not bored by any stretch of the imagination. So the group that we do get to see on a regular basis has been fairly consistent from a work perspective. And then outside of that, it's just kind of keeping small friend groups together to keep ourselves safe and healthy, but it's definitely not the norm, and I'm waiting for something to hopefully change soon.
Yeah, I've found myself, as much as I've enjoyed certain aspects of work from home, I have really enjoyed getting back to the office in addition to just going to the job site. So I look forward to more in person, slowly and safely. But, you know, I've been keeping in touch with friends pretty well by phone. And I think having a little more time that's not distracted this last year has probably meant that I have connected with those friends who are really important to me more than in past years. So there's been some good out of it too, perhaps.
I love that. Thank you guys so much for sharing. It has been a weird year indeed, but hopefully brighter days ahead. I'm going to quickly share my screen again and just throw up your guys' lovely headshots and titles. We did get a question asking, about your roles and titles again. So here is a snapshot, because I would have hated to butcher or make a mistake on anybody's, to the one who asked the question. And I'm checking to see if we have any other coming through. I think I see one here, kind of piggybacking on kind of how we're managing and navigating COVID and in the pandemic in these times. One person asked about kind of what is your new must-have. I think we all had our routine going into the office daily once upon a time. Mine was grabbing a coffee from Tower House Cafe, maybe just taking a quick look at the views from 33. Rachel, I always love Tower House views and all the amenities there in that space as well. But what's kind of something that shifted now? What are your new must-haves? What's your new, like maybe a new cornerstone of a part of your routine now that's been changed due to the times we're in?
I would have to say, and it hasn't been as much lately because the weather's been tragic with the snow and the extreme cold, but you know, as the pandemic progressed, I turned a lot of my one-on-one conversations and catch-ups with my team members to walk and talks. And it was assurance that I would, one, actually leave the house for the day, but also you get outside, you get a little exercise, and your typical catch-up of where you would normally grab coffee with a colleague, you're both kind of doing it separately, but still you feel that camaraderie of doing it together.
I think that's a great point, Rachel. I think it's been hard for all of us to try to find some normalcy, to take time for ourselves, and collectively being able to offer that time to one another. It did change how we spend that time together, but I do feel, to your point, it has been, we found a way to be productive with unique ways of having our meetings right now. So kind of changing things up, and all of us just being open to that, I think is probably all something that we rely on right now.
Just to expand upon my role, because I don't feel like I really addressed that either. I was, from an MEP standpoint, we were the engineers of the project for MEP, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. I was the lead mechanical engineer as well as the project manager from ESD. So, organize the other trades. But what I found that I needed to do that's become a must-have is really create a separate space for where I was working versus living. At first, I was like working in my living room, and then like I had no separation whatsoever. So trying to create that space and really putting away my phone, trying to put stuff away and like really disconnect, because it was so easy to just, it all blended together at the beginning. And so I really tried to create that separate space, where before it was kind of like, okay, I left the office, but I was still on my phone, still trying to, do stuff. But it became more evident to try and create that separation.
Thank you for sharing those. We got a very kind compliment here. You are all such polished speakers, very enjoyable and informative discussion. Good job speaking, Lydia. How did you get to be such great speakers? Any tips for public speaking advice?
Just practice, keep doing it.
Honestly, that's
a lot, yeah.
Well, I concur. I think that you all did a wonderful job. And again, so grateful for having you all join us today. I do believe that I'm going to stop share. So we kind of got a snapshot here of what everybody's roles were. But I want to thank you all again, Leanne, Maggie, Janelle, Rachel, for joining us today and for sharing this very insightful information about your roles and giving us a chance to celebrate you all and celebrate the team for a job well done on this historic, iconic redevelopment project. Congratulations to all of you for your unique roles in building out this Willis Tower neighborhood. And thank you all for joining us today for today's panel discussion. We have recorded today's session. We'll be sharing that recording in some post-communication follow-up. And we encourage you to keep an eye out for our next Tower Talk and Women of Willis programming. Thank you all again so much for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.